Hi, and welcome to another episode of Real Chiropractic Stories, where we tell the real stories of individuals whose lives have been changed by introducing chiropractic. Today, I've got a longtime friend and colleague, Dr. Chad McDill. It's been told to me that his story is amazing and that you won't want to miss it. What's really hard about this for me to believe is that I lived with the guy for 2 years. And I've heard that this story is something that you won't believe and that you won't forget. He's been changing lives and it's caused him to change lives and to become a chiropractor and serving the Trenton and North Georgia area and Chattanooga for over the last 15 years. And you're not going to want to miss this. Let's dive right in. Now, if you've got a story about how chiropractic has changed your life, feel free to reach out to me. You can get me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can email me or call the office. We're looking to just collect a collection of stories so that everyone's got a resource for that person that says, you don't know what my condition is like. Also, if you like this, give it a 5-star review and thumbs up. Now, let's introduce Chad. Hey, Chad, what's going on?
How's it going? Man, I'm doing great, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good, and I'm excited to have you and to share your story and to connect with you a little bit deeper. But before we get into that, can I ask for you to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I graduated from Georgia, University of Georgia, and that's where my actual beginning with chiropractic happened. And we'll get there in a little bit. But after that, I left and went to Life Chiropractic School, where, as you mentioned, we were roommates for a couple of years. And then, me and Dan left and went to Sherman, graduated from there. And I've been practicing in the Trenton, Georgia area for about the last 16 years. So just having a big time right here, just outside of Chattanooga, like you said. And it's just an amazing place to live and raise a family.
Awesome. Now, for those of you who are listening and wondering who Dan is a colleague of ours, Dr. Dan Moss. He is in Canton, Georgia, and we actually shared his story just a couple of weeks ago. But we all lived together for a couple of years as we were getting towards the end of our schooling, and Dan actually shared with me that we had to share your story. So we're not going to go any further without diving in and understanding, how did you get introduced to chiropractic?
Well, I think getting introduced to real chiropractic happened there. I'd been around and I'd been adjusted as a kid and things like that, a little bit here and there, but never really any communication. I don't even know if you knew this. I drove trucks to put myself through college. And I was driving one morning and I was on the way about 5 o'clock in the morning running a route. And I had a lady, she started to drift over in my lane. And there was a huge culvert on the side, probably about 18, 20 feet deep, and with this big, huge chert rock in it. And I didn't want to dump my truck. I didn't want to go off the side, and I didn't want to run her over, but yet I'd made the choice that I thought I was going to have to hit some part of her car. And then I saw that she had a baby seat in the back. Mm-hmm. So I dumped my truck. And when it went over, it started to roll down the hill.
So for our listeners, what dump the truck means is that it went over on its side. Is that right?
Yeah, it went over on its side down a culvert, and then it started rolling end over end and down its side. And the trailer of the truck, meaning this is a huge box truck, detached.
Are we talking like 16 wheels, like cab and then truck, or is it all one?
It's called a straight truck. And this straight truck is like a huge box truck, like the largest moving truck you've seen that isn't a semi. So all right. That big, full of about 27,000 pounds of ice. I delivered ice, bagged ice to like favorite markets and stuff. And so it had 27,000 pounds of load in the back. I hadn't even been gone for 10 minutes from Dalton Ice Company. And so this truck starts going down the hill, and it didn't even have a seatbelt in it. So I'm getting thrown around. This is before seatbelts. This is 1995. And So
I think they had seat belts, but it might not have
not
been.
in this truck they did. Because this was probably a 1970s model truck.
All right.
And so this truck ends up at the bottom of the culvert, and I'm underneath the steering wheel with half my body, and half my body is trying to stay up. And then the trailer landed on top of it with all that weight and crushed the truck down through the water main. And it started to catch on fire. And I thought, you know, as a 20-year-old kid, that I was about to burn to death because I was crushed and the steering wheel had gone underneath my rib cage and my pelvis was twisted and my legs were pinned underneath the gears, and like I was in between. It was a straight truck, had a stick shift, so I had, you know, the stick shift on one side of me and my ankle was pinned underneath the gas pedal, and you know, I was completely crushed inside of this truck. And water was pouring through it, and it was starting to catch on fire, and yet water kept it at bay, you know. And so I didn't know. I sat there, unable to free myself, not knowing if it was going to blow up or whether I was going to just burn to death, or, you know, I just didn't know. And along came a guy and his son from, I guess they were headed to a football practice or something at 5 in the morning, and they climbed down into this culvert and came in and finished tearing the windshield out. There was only a part of the windshield that was stuck out of this corner, and they ripped it out, and they literally got down in that truck with me, and they were still outside of it, and they were just ripping and pulling, and he was just telling his son, just pull, and they managed to rip me out of it. And as they did, they tore a lot of muscles from my thigh, and they, you know, I came to find out that, you know, I had herniated discs, and I had, you know, just torn myself. My pelvis was completely twisted, but they drugged me up the side of the embankment and called the ambulance. And I never saw those people again, you know, and I simply woke up on a gurney, and I woke up then again in the hospital. And I then woke up again, you know, getting discharged, you know, so they'd hop me up on all these drugs, and I was just out of it. And when I got released, you know, I was just told, you know, hey, you've got a bunch of torn muscles, and you've got a bunch of herniated discs, and you've got all these problems. Just take these Flexerils and take these pills and these Oxycontin, hydrocodone, and all this stuff, and you'll get better. You're young.
Oh my gosh.
And about 6 months later, I still couldn't walk. And I literally was bedridden. I was failing out of school. I was still, of course, collecting my financial aid check, but I couldn't attend class. And I was really hopped up on all these meds, and I was losing my life, you know. And my girlfriend at the time named Karen, God bless you, thank you. She said, I can't go down this road with you, and you're either going to get your life together or I'm out of here. And I said, well, what does that mean? You know, how am I going to get my life together? Everybody just says I should be better, and that, you know, things have kind of healed, but yet I still can't stand up straight. I can't walk. I can't do these things. We know why. And she said, we're going to my chiropractor, Dr. Huppert, and we're going to go see what's going on. And so I go to Dr. Huppert's office, and he took a bunch of x-rays, and he sat me down, and he told me what was still causing my problem, and that my pelvis was still twisted, and that my lumbars were rotated, and that was causing the disc bulges, and that these subluxations were literally choking off the ability of my lower body to even heal and for me to walk. And so he worked on me every single day for a month. He would let me sleep in his office. He had a back room, and he would put me in to adjust me. And I think he was doing it because I was in so much pain. I was screaming and crying. He didn't want his other patients to hear me. And
So that's how you get the private room experience. Is that
yeah,
right? Just start screaming and yelling. All right, that doesn't work in my office. So anyone coming, you can scream and yell all you want.
Yeah, there is no other room. Yeah, but literally about a month later, I was standing on the front porch of his office on Millage Avenue in Athens, Georgia, and he just said, "Hey, man, your life's a mess. You're still, you know, just barely off these drugs. We've just barely gotten you to walk again. You can't go back to driving trucks yet. What are you going to do with your life, son?" I don't know. I don't have anything. I don't really have, any resources. And he said, well, then you need to, if anyone in the world can understand how powerful chiropractic is, it's you. And you need to become a chiropractor. And if you'll do it, I'll give you a job. I'll help you keep your apartment. I will help you get off these drugs, and we'll save your life. And it changed everything. I left the business school. I had to redo a year at Georgia to get enough credits to go, to finish with a biology degree, to do all the, the requirements you have to get into chiropractic school. And he really just saved my life and put me on a different course for the rest of my life. And he not only gave me my profession, he really gave me my mission. And that's what chiropractic has turned into for me, due to the understanding of how powerful it can be.
So share with me, what did he explain to you about chiropractic that helped you to become driven to make this your mission and your life calling?
Oh, man, it was that our bodies have an innate intelligence, this God-given wisdom inside of us that is constantly giving to it all its properties and keeping it in organization. And it's this life force within us that we're born in the moment of conception that's running this body and trying to do the best it can, and that things can interfere with its ability to express and regenerate our bodies. And one of the biggest thing that can be is that it uses our central nervous system as this, internet to organize the reconstruction and the regeneration of the body. And that if your body is subluxated and that the spinal bones are out of alignment, that chokes off that life force that's literally using our electrical connectivity to run our bodies, and that will impede every other part of your body. And that was what was causing my problem. But more importantly, it could choke off the life force to anything in our bodies. And therefore, it was always the first thing to get checked and keep healthy for your whole life.
So are you saying that for people, they should wind up having their spines checked first?
Absolutely. I think that hands down, the most important thing, from the moment of birth is that, because birth can be a traumatic process. Anybody who's watched any birth videos can see or been through that experience as a parent. If there's any kind of shoulders that aren't just coming straight through, that can be a lot of torque on the head and the neck, and that can subluxate the bones of the neck. And that child from the moment of birth could have some misalignments, robbing it of its health potential, its life force flow through that nerve system.
Now, you mentioned this word subluxation. What does that mean?
Well, it's the loss of alignment. It's the loss of a vertebra's juxtaposition to the one above it and below it. Thus, it's causing pathological changes to the soft tissue around it. It's altering the function.
Wow. And is that what chiropractors work on and Dr. Hubbard worked on for you?
Absolutely. It was the only thing that chiropractors really should work on. That's our specialty, and that's my opinion, of course, but you're asking. And that, that subluxations, that was all he was working on, was correcting the cause of my problem, the cause of the interference to my body's ability to heal and regenerate. And that, for me, was spinal misalignment.
Now, how does that relate to like exercise or eating right?
Well, man, gosh, especially exercise, and things like, I think that people logically need to understand that you're trying to exercise your frame and you're doing all these muscles and you're doing all these dynamic movements that require balance, coordination, and function. And if the frame that your body is moving on that houses your spinal cord is not lined up properly, well, it's kind of like taking a misaligned car to the drag strip. You're going to demand high function of this thing. And it's just like, no way it's going to perform to its optimum level. And in fact, it can do more damage when you're operating at such a high demand on something that's, not aligned for it. And then, as far as it's that internet connection, that life force connection that goes to the organ, every organ, much less the organs of digestion, that control and coordinate that ability for us to assimilate food. And if they're not operating right, then you don't absorb even what you eat.
Wow. So if my spine is out of alignment, it doesn't matter what kind of food I put in?
That's right. I mean, it still matters, but yet it's not going to matter as much. I mean, you're not going to, if your stomach and your intestinal tract is unhealthy because the nerves that are telling it how to work aren't, working right, then they're going to have the organ itself is going to have lower function, and you can put in perfect nutrition, perfect organic nutrition, and you're not going to be able to take in as much of it. Because again, I think we miss that sometimes when we talk with patients is that, yeah, it matters what you eat, but it matters more what you absorb of what you eat, because that's what you rebuild your body with. And so it's first step is making sure that these organs are functioning right through having a proper nerve.
I love it. I totally agree with you. We've got to make sure that the connections are going from our brain to the body, to every tissue, whether it's the respiratory tissue, the digestive tissue, the elimination tissue, so that we can wind up absorbing the right things, getting rid of the junk and leftovers, and so that our body can have the resources that it needs to supplement that energy that tells the tissues what to do. So it can have the resources and use them in controlling how we wind up working and moving. Now, right now, we're in a really unique state in the world and in life.
Aren't we?
Uh-huh. Now, how does that wind up relating to how someone might be able to live right now?
Oh, man. I think ultimately the biggest subluxation, the biggest misalignment is between the ears. I really think that you have to ask yourself what makes more sense to the individual. Is it that your health comes from outside in, and it comes from a pill or a vaccine and a mask, and or do you believe in that germ theory, or do you believe in the terrain theory, meaning that the difference between why one person gets sick and has no symptoms and one person gets sick and dies is the health of the individual. And so if we're going to focus on the terrain, just like a farmer would the soil to get it ready to plant a crop, to grow the best crop and have the biggest yield, then we should look at our bodies the same way, and we should prepare them. And if that makes sense to people's mindset, then of course chiropractic is the first step, because it's what's controlling all of the terrain. It's what's controlling all of those tissues and giving them their coordination to, stay at homeostasis, to use a 10-cent word, optimum function.
And for everyone who doesn't know what that means balance in the right place.
Exactly, at all times, and being able to adapt to whatever stress, the virus, the bacteria, the whatever. And so the closer you are to homeostasis or perfect function, then that takes your whole body being dealt with. And that's why I love chiropractic, because it looks to build people up instead of, and bridge the gaps. Find out where those gaps are. Is it a nutrition gap? Is it an exercise gap? Is it a nervous system gap? Is there what's missing in that person's overall well-being? And then help them fill those gaps to get them back to 100%. I mean, that makes sense to my brain. And
I think it makes sense to most. I think we forget about that grade school anatomy, and we think that the musculoskeletal system or the muscles just move on their own, and that we just need to exercise them.
yeah,
And then we think that the digestive system just works on its own, and we need to put food in it.
yeah,
And when we wind up taking just simple steps to go back through and review over the charts behind me and behind you, and for those of you that don't know and aren't seeing this and are on our podcast, it's the autonomic nervous system and the musculoskeletal nervous system, and how they both are so closely interconnected, and how that spinal cord that encases them protects them, but also can damage them when it gets shifted out of the right position. And that enables as well the immune system to respond to abnormal tissues, whether they're viruses, whether they're bacteria, whether they're malignant cells, whether they're space-occupying lesions, to let us know that we may need someone who's got experience with helping with this. And to find the right place, we start at the basics, and then we go up higher and higher and higher and higher. We start with understanding and making sure we're connected. And once we're connected, then we might need to go further to figure out if there's something different going on or something more life-threatening.
Yeah, I think that's it. You can't ask. That's one of the things I think is so many people, I don't know, I bet you get asked this question a lot, like, hey, what's the one thing I could do that would guarantee that I'm going to be healthier? And it's always the same thing. It's make sure your nerve system functions as well as possible and is under as least stress and is damaged the least, because it determines how everything else is going to function. And it's ground zero. And it really is. And then from there, we can dive into the rabbit holes of so many people. Every person's unique and every person's individual and has different stresses. And so we can dive into those and how that, goes to them individually and what that does to their body's needs. And then how we can tailor those other things like exercise and nutrition and detoxification, those kinds of things.
So let's talk about that. You mentioned the one thing that you get asked about. I usually like to find out about 4 things that you tell every individual out there that they need to do to be healthy.
Absolutely. Well, I think that...
And you don't have to do 4, but let's do a few things.
Absolutely. I'm more of a 5-person guy.
Okay.
Because I think it's the mindset in which you have to decide what you're going to follow. And that you believe in your health and you believe in your body and have faith and hope in the fact that if you treat it better, it's going to work better. and so then follow that with chiropractic care and corrective care, and then moving into wellness care for life to maintain it, just like you would brushing your teeth or anything else that you want to keep. I think then the next step down is nutrition and making sure that they eat whole food, as fresh as possible. And I usually shoot for 70% fresh organic nutrition, that's vegetable based. And then the rest is sort of individual. We tailor that last 30% depending on their dietary needs for dairy and meat and whatever nuts and seeds. Then I really look at exercise. It's like, you've got to have proper biomechanics, and it's different at every stage of life. I used to love to run 50 miles a week, and I did it at a weight that wasn't the healthiest for me at one point in time. So my knees don't like to run as much as they used to. So I don't run as much. I cycle more, and things like that. They're in tailoring that exercise to get oxygenation to the body.
I just got into cycling. It is the awesomest thing ever.
Yes, dude, I love it. It's a much better breeze than running.
Oh my God, yes.
Less traumatic. And now, it's like you've got kids, and it's cool to get on a bike and do something together, and you can have fun with it that way, or you can jump out and do it on your own and hammer out a bunch of miles or whatever. And then I think that last is detoxification. I think that we've got to be aware that our bodies accumulate toxins from just normal cellular respiration or body function, and that the body is constantly having waste products, but then also from the food we eat, air we breathe, water we drink, we get toxins. And upregulating our body's ability to get rid of that. Those are the 5 things that I cover with every patient. Depending upon where they enter, we might do some of it initially, or it might just need to be all chiropractic and just focused on the nerve system, or depending upon other health concerns, heart disease, diabetes, we might dive into all of it at once. And sometimes I feel like it's a fire hose that way.
And for some people, if you haven't cared for yourself but emergency care for 50 years, well, the house is going to burn down.
Unless we saturate you.
Right? We need to take a multi-pronged approach, or it's going to take twice as long as you've been living to get you back to where you halfway want to be, and we'll hope we can get you there.
Oh, I know. I'm always shooting for over 100 for everybody, but most people haven't lived that way to get there.
So when do you think someone should start that 5-step program?
At birth. I think actually before birth, when a woman's ready to, I think I'm gonna have kids, or people become sexually active. I think that is then the time that lady should have we should have it so ingrained in our culture that the mindset says, well, hey, I might get pregnant, so I should really start taking good care of myself so that my body can raise a healthy fetus and child. and that we're minimizing things that pass that placental barrier and get into the child, you know.
I'm going to say that what did you, like, I totally agree, but what you just said is so far beyond what most people think of. So would you mind explaining a little bit about what you mean by things that could pass the placental barrier and taking care of things and your health before that?
Absolutely. You know, I think that a lot of people should go back and look at like the 10 Americans study from ewg.org and their fetal cord studies. They took fetal cord blood. So baby was born, they chopped off a piece of the cord and sent it off to get analyzed. And they found on average 280 industrial chemicals, things like lead. I mean, we've got rid of DDT in the 70s, but yet it's still being found in the tissues in this fetal cord blood, and things like arsenic and fire retardants and all these chemicals that are going through and passing through, and that the developing embryo and baby is literally having to detox and having to chemically kind of weather the storm along with the whatever nutrition's coming through. Some of these things, like these toxins that we know, like lead, arsenic, and these flame retardant chemicals and things, they're getting through to our children. And then that's causing issues.
If a woman were to work on taking care of things before she started to plan to get pregnant, she can help reduce that?
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. Our blood's brand new every 120 days. And so on that concept, we give blood a couple times a year. Why? Because we've regenerated all those cells. So utilizing that same thing, our blood's going to be new every 120 days. And so what's it made of? And that's that blood that's flowing through around that placenta and feeding that child. And so what's it made of?
So for our listeners that are out there, what you're saying is that every 120 days our blood recycles, so that every 120 days you can wind up becoming a healthier, entire individual than you were the previous quarter of the year.
At the blood level, at a measurable blood level. And I don't think we think about it that way. We don't talk about it that way, but that's the cycle, man. I mean,
I don't think we do talk about that at all.
No, and I think
that was just, I had a wow moment right now. I knew I was going to have it somewhere in our conversation, because every time that we've talked, I get one of these, oh, reallys. Just so you know.
Yes, absolutely, man. I appreciate
it. Chadisms. I was thinking before this, where is my Chadism going to come out? What? But that was powerful. Wow. So for all of you listening, make the change now and you'll see the results in a new you in 120 days.
Absolutely. And you'll be able to measure it on blood work. I tell my patients all the time, show me the numbers. If we're not measuring it, we can't manage it. So if we're not measuring your weight, and we're not measuring your fitness, and we're not measuring your blood work, and we're not measuring your spinal health, then we're not managing it, because we can't see how it's getting better or worse. And so instead of just getting a thumbs up or a thumbs down from your doctor on your blood work, you need to dive into knowing what that means and these different things. And you can literally see how your body changes. And that's why doctors will measure your blood work. Well, come back in 30 or 120 days and we'll redo your blood work to measure your cholesterol to see if your diet changes are working, or whether we need to alter your medicine, because they're just looking at one factor. But literally that means you've recycled it. You're a new you. And what did your yield? What was your yield? What did you get?
Or change.
Yeah. What did you change, man?
What was the actual change? I love it. Well, now, Chad, we're going to get ready to wrap up here, but I want to, provide and open the table for you. Was there anything else that you want to share with our listeners or people out there about life, chiropractic, you, the world?
Yeah, I think I always go back to, I have this little old lady who's, and she's little, 5'2", 90 years old, just turned 90, and her name's Helen, and she loves for me to give her props all the time, because she's 90, and she still drives, and she's still active, and she's still doing all these things. But I did a workshop, and I was talking about chiropractic, and she started out in my office, and when she started till now, she's lost 80 pounds. She's become non-diabetic. She's lowered her thyroid medicine. She'd had cancer of the tongue, and they removed half her tongue, so she does a lot of liquid nutrition. So we had to work around that with supplements and all this stuff. And I was going through this process and talking about this stuff, and I said, does anybody have any questions? And she raised her hand in front of about 50 people. And she says, yeah, I want to know why somebody didn't tell me about this before I had half my tongue cut off. Why didn't somebody tell me before I had cancer that this was the way to live? And I think that the thing I want to leave anyone who hears this with is that we've got to talk about this. These are the conversations that people need to have, because they don't, if you don't know you have a choice, you don't have a choice. But if you know that there's a better way to live, and that there's a way that will lead you down a different, better path, then you can make that choice. And I just think that, every time I think of Helen and her calling me out, and I literally looked at her in front of 50 people and said, I don't know, but I'm trying to change that now. And that was why I'm doing this workshop. And she said, okay, that was good enough for her. She was like, okay. But yet it was really infuriating to her that she had gotten to that point in her life. And here at age 88 was the time when she was in my office, and she's still 90. She's still a patient, of course, on wellness care. And why? Because she's 90 and she wants to stay, she wants to make it at 91.
Right.
And so, right. And so she was looking at it that way, but she didn't get that until 88. Wow. And so she's looking back and thinking, I could have changed my whole entire life. And that's what I don't want people to do. I want them to know it up front so that they can have that life. Because if she's made it to 90 and she started out that way, this might have been one of those people who could have made it to 120.
Totally. What's your trajectory, and what should it be? And I want to congratulate you on getting out there to share that message and to help guiding so many people on shifting their trajectory, because there's more of that that's so needed. There's more of that we all need to know about. I was blessed and had that trajectory shift at 20.
Nice.
And it's changed my life for the rest of their life. And that's my mission with this program, is that we can wind up telling more people more chiropractic stories, so that it connects with them, so that they can start taking action on their life, so that the trajectory of their life goes in a totally different direction. So I want to thank you for joining me on this and sharing those two stories, because your story and then Helen's story, because that is exactly why we're doing this.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me. I was glad to know that, like I said, Dr. Moss was like, hey, man, he's got a great thing that he's doing for the world. And I was glad to get to be a part of it.
Well, I want to thank you so much. Now, I got two questions I ask all of our guests before we go. Cool. First one, who's your chiropractor?
Oh, man, I have two. I have Dr. Eric Wright, who practices in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Who is a Max Living chiropractor as well. And then Dr. Reed Kent, who you might remember, he went to school with us. And I can't remember who his roommate was, but he dated Lisa Lapresi. And Reed was his roommate.
Okay.
And so anyway, I still see him. He practices in Chattanooga also. So they're both great guys.
Awesome. And then lastly, whose story do we need to share as a part of this program? Who should we connect with to tell their chiropractic story, so that we can have that resource?
Well, if I could give you two, I would say Dr. Eric Wright, and probably I really think that Jeff Pasley down in Alabama would be a great person to connect with.
I love it. Well, I'm going to look for you to help me on making those connections. Can I count on you for that?
Heck yeah.
Awesome. And for our listeners out there, I want to thank you for joining us. As we just talked about, the mission of this program is to help more people realize what chiropractic can do and how it can help, and how it needs to be introduced sooner rather than later. So please share this story with someone, whether they've been in a crash and had trauma and have been on medication for a long time and told that that's the only thing they can do and they're not getting their life back, or if they're like Helen and living into living their lives and want their trajectory to continue to go up so that they wind up making it to 120. Let's look to pass this along and share it with them. Also, be sure to subscribe on any of your podcatchers so you catch all of the episodes. Once again, I want to thank you guys for joining me, and I'll see you next week with another story.
All right.